this morning.
What the hell was that?
From the Dean.
It's a perfect day, talking about
I had
turkeys.
I was posting some YouTube videos, and I think that's what started off in my machine.
Yeah, YouTube videos.
I'm back. Right.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to an amazing episode of Sales Chatter this morning. We've got a lot to unpack.
Data Day Wednesday.
Data Day Wednesday. Let's get it, boys.
My favorite. Let's go.
Welcome to the HPLS podcast. Live, relevant, and high performance information, conversations, and education weekly.
There we go. Ashley, back from the morning.
Good morning, Ashley. Got Lisa this morning by 4 seconds. Look at that.
Hey, Lisa.
Good morning,
New
Lisa.
competitor comes into the mix.
This is like the dragsters, right? They measure the start time at the drag race.
Oh, yeah.
I'll tell you what, I'm really dumbfounded that Lisa didn't win this morning. She's got some competition now.
Yeah.
She's got some competition, and kind of go from there.
Reaction time.
Just right there, just click on it, right? And gents, this morning before we actually get started to amazing data day, we got a lot to unpack. I just actually want to celebrate all of you guys actually got some milestones that I've been paying attention to, so I actually want to get started. So, Jeff, I know with the New Jersey Association of Logistics and Supply Chain New Luminaries, you guys are meeting tonight. If you can just shoot some details on what you guys are doing tonight and your mission statement, because I know it's a big thing for you and a lot of people in that area can benefit from it.
It's a big thing, and our milestone is that we reached 100 followers, which is great in a very short period of time.
Good for you,
we got some, good feedback on it. I got some DMs on it. Not sure how it's going to turn out because it's the launch night. So anything is possible. We're hoping for a really good turnout. And just to make it so simple, it's about people helping other people and mentoring, coaching them, and helping them to develop in certain areas within the supply chain and logistics industry. It's not about sharing cards and stealing people's clients. It's just about helping people get on the same page and basically help them to resolve issues of today. Tomorrow is gone. There's so many new and different issues that we all face. And, it's about time that we all come together and figure that out. So that's what the association is all about in the most simplistic way. So we're looking
even if you have 2 people show up tonight, Jeff, it's a success.
It's a success.
You know what?
You made that dream to vision. And
you have one person show up with you, and you're able to help that person, you now won.
There we go.
Yeah. One of my old bosses maybe coming. I invited him, and he lives down the street, so not so far away from it. But we're developing swag. We've got our logo, mission statement, all of that. So we're looking forward to it. We'll see what happens, but it's full steam ahead, man.
Awesome. So congratulations on that, Dan. I gotta congratulate you, brother. Yesterday I saw an email that the audio version of like the podcast and everything like that has actually hit 6,000 downloads. So I want to say congratulations to you for everything you've done. Shout out to DJ who's watching. Like you and DJ built this at the beginning of the year, and I know that you've had the podcast like your own stuff beforehand. So 6,000 downloads, man, that's no easy task at all. So
I actually reset that as of January 1st when DJ and I decided to go daily. So that's as of January 1st because I reset it in Restream in Buzzsprout.
Awesome.
So yeah, thank you. Yeah.
That's awesome to hear. It's just growing in. Saving the best for last. Dean, this weekend you're going to be in Houston for Freight Fest. I was taking a look at that. That's, I believe, sponsored by Trucking Hustle, I think it is. And if you just want to give a little bit of details, what days you're going to be there and where the audience can basically find out some more information for you.
Truck and Hustle is the organizers. Romel Watley, I've been on his podcast a couple of times now. Very interesting group of carriers. I think it seems to be like a small fleet owner-operator type focus from what I can tell. It's my first time at an event. We'll be there Friday night, set up Friday, exhibition booth set up Friday, big dinner Friday night. Saturday, a bunch of speakers, very interesting format. Everyone's got 20 minutes and it's kind of like speed dating, but probably not like speed dating, but that's probably bad. But we've got 20 minutes to talk about the freight market, but I'm going to talk a little bit about the freight market and take the opportunity to teach a lot of these folks about how to stay awake behind the wheel and get better quality sleep. So you get one chance to save some lives out there. There's too many people are struggling with this. I lost a good friend of mine last Friday. He committed suicide in his truck. He's an Air Force veteran, another Air Force veteran. We lose about 20 a day. But he's my oldest Instagram follower, and we DM'd all the time. And you just don't know who's struggling with mental illness. So I think it's time. I've written a couple of blog posts this week and last week about sleep deprivation, the teenage sleep epidemic. Next week's daylight saving ends, so Monday's going to be a bit of a crapshoot on Monday mornings. It'll be dark. People will be walking around like zombies, going to work, driving to work when it's dark, when it's normally light. So there'll be all sorts of silly things happen next week. So that's the session. There's a big networking dinner again on the Saturday night, and then we all travel home on Sunday. But thanks for the
opportunity. Now, Dean, do you have, off the top of your head, do you have any stats when it comes to that daylight savings, what happens on the road with accidents and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, not nearly as bad on the fall back as the spring forward. To use the two, right? So when you lose an hour's sleep, that sleep deprivation, accidents increase by about 6% the following week. There's all sorts of impact on heart attacks and health. So it does take a few, think about time zone changes. For every 1 hour time zone shift, it takes a sunrise. So 5 hours to London, it takes 5 days for your body clock to catch up. You jet there, but your body lags. So it's called jet lag, right? But it's one sunrise for every time zone you shift. When I go home to Australia, it's 14 days. And then I come home after 2 weeks there, and I come home, my body clock gets home 2 weeks later. So daylight saving, it's like it takes a while for you adjust to it. When we go forward this time, the impact is not so much on the sleep deprivation, the fatigue. It's on the fact that we're commuting more in the darkness. The people that get injured and killed the most are the pedestrians next week, right? Other than, there'll be some other crazy things go on because people are just not paying attention, but it's really the darkness that people have got to watch next week. The statistics, Dan, I've got some here if you wanted to, they say NHTSA, National Highway Transport Safety Association, thinks 6,400 deaths annually, 109,000 injuries, $109 billion is the economic cost of these accidents. And the thing that I would like to impress upon everyone, when I was running the ATA in Australia, I was general manager of the ATA in the late 90s in Australia, and we were looking to change our hours of service, which ended up, I hosted the FMCSA, DOT, Transport Canada in Australia, took them around to all of the companies that we were running the fatigue management program through, which was performance-based hours of service. And we did a study at the Adelaide Centre of Research because no one could really equate what driving tired meant, but we all knew what driving drunk was. We knew that 0.05 was a level of intoxication and impairment that was unsafe to be on the road. So what we did at the Adelaide Centre for Research, we contracted with Dr. Drew Dawson in 1997 this was, and this study's been repeated a dozen times since then. So we had two groups of people. One group we kept awake for 28 hours. The other group we fed alcohol every 30 minutes. And there was no shortage of people for the second group at a university. But what we did is we put them on a simulator to measure their cognitive psychomotor skills, essentially all the motor skills you need to drive a truck, right? Vigilance, concentration. So over the 28 hours, it turned out that 17 hours of sustained wakefulness equals 0.05. So this is why the hours of service runs into trouble, because it's not about 11 hours on duty. It's about how long you've been awake when the work occurs. Right. That's the danger, right? It's why when you work a 12-hour shift but commute 2 hours either way, you're commuting home when you're at about 0.05 level of impairment. That's why all those crazy things happen outside of work, not during work on the commute to and from. So, but the study went a little bit further. 24 hours awake is 0.10. And I think we could all relate to that when we've been up for 24 hours, that we get a bit crazy, right? So, but that's the message next week is drowsy driving is a serious thing. But I prefer not to talk about the driving part, but fix all the things that lead up to it.
Yeah.
It's not, I mean, everyone knows what it's like to be tired. What they don't know is how do I get good quality sleep so I don't get tired? So that's where I've been focusing my attention the last couple of weeks at this time of the year. The rub is that this time of the year, you get better quality sleep when it's colder and darker. So in winter, you've got more daylight. So there's an inverse relationship between daylight and accidents. So there's more accidents in summer because you've got more daylight, less sleep. And sleep is delayed earlier into the evening because you've got more daylight and you're doing more stuff.
Mm-hmm.
In winter, in Canada, imagine the guys up in the Canadian mines, right, where it doesn't get dark till midnight, right? You've got to have blue blocker lights, sunglasses on, darken all the rooms in your, the mining hut where you're sleeping, all those sorts of things, so you can simulate darkness. So darkness is actually a good thing for a lot of people. It can go the other way where you develop seasonal affective disorder, where you don't get enough sunlight and you become depressed. So it's a really delicate balance between getting enough sleep but winter's a good time for good quality sleep. You could get really good quality sleep in a truck in particular without the APU or the engine running. But of course you don't want to freeze on the other end of the spectrum. So lots to think about.
Most will have gen sets by now, no?
What's that, sorry?
Most trucks will have gen sets by now, no?
Yeah, a lot of trucks have got APUs, but a lot of fleet trucks will idle. They'll just idle their trucks. The other reason they idle in winter is because so they don't have the fuel gel and the filters ice up. So they just keep them running 24 hours a day. At some point, fleets get to where they just say, we're not turning our trucks off now until spring. Yeah. So they just run all the time. So whereas older school guys have probably got an APU, if you're like me, you just get in a sleeping bag and put more blankets on. I can't stand the noise. So I think everybody's got personal preferences. There's a lot of fighting going on in truck stops, though, when guys park next to each other idling, or someone's got a reefer motor and they park next to a dry van in a quiet spot. Next thing, the reefer motor, especially in summer where it starts up and shuts down because of the setting, it's at that set point where it's got to work a little bit extra. There's fights. The people get out and want to fight each other because they're trying to sleep.
Right.
I can see that, though. I could see that.
Yeah. Another thing too, Dean, is that with sleep deprivation, nuclear verdicts. When truck drivers fall asleep and they kill a family of 4 or whatever.
Yeah.
On the road.
Yeah.
I mean, I wonder what the statistics is regarding that when truck drivers don't have enough sleep and the percentage of nuclear verdicts related to that.
It's underreported, Jeff. My first company I worked for here was in the fatigue management, sleep deprivation, 24/7 scheduling space, and we did defense work for trucking fleets that were accused of being negligent in exactly that situation where there were fatalities. And we built some simulation software called the Circadian Alertness Simulator, where you could take the log feed, ELD, essentially. In those days, we had to key punch in manually all the lines on a log. So for 30 days, the logs on a driver that had an accident took days. But we could simulate sleep down to the minute. We could simulate alertness down to the minute. We were using that in courts in defense of trucking companies, where we said there's a very low probability this driver was asleep based on his sleep-wake patterns. And we would go in and do defense work in juries, which is no fun because you just get torn to pieces. In a number of cases, though, Jeff, we just said to the fleet, you need to settle this quickly. He was clearly asleep. You could BS all you like. That guy was clearly. So it can work against you, having the records. Most of the time it worked out for the carriers. The thing was that, to your point about punitive, this gets back to why ELDs came in. Yeah. ELDs didn't come in because of safety. They came in because trucking fleets were having their pants sued off by plaintiff attorneys because they had paper logs and couldn't prove compliance. Right. Because the rationale was that if you couldn't demonstrate compliant, therefore you were negligent, which may or may not have been the case. There was one large fleet that got hit with a $36 million judgment, of which 21 was punitive, I think. Paper logs went missing. 4 people killed in an accident, right? So this, and I was working for telematics companies with truckload carriers during this period when there was a lot of nuclear verdicts because paper logs just didn't give you any protection. So fleets said, we need to get ELDs in place as quick. We need to get what they call it, records of duty status, electronic, call it e-logs. We need to get them in as quick as we can. Some fleets were scanning in paper logs into software.
Wow.
So that was that they were digitizing the paper log. The problem was the driver was just drawing a straight line of 11 hours and then 10, but the fuel and fuel receipts and the tolls didn't match the rest breaks. And one company I was working with got a 6-figure fine because the receipts didn't line up with the logs. And that was 2007. And from that day on, you want to bet every truckload carrier put in electronic logs. Because the first company was back in 1997. So ELDs just didn't start in 2017. They've been in place for probably 10 years before they were mandated for the large carriers. Right, there was most of the small carriers, owner-operators, small fleets that still ran on paper logs. So that's nuclear verdicts have changed from that typical fatigue-related thing. It's the notion that if I'm compliant, I'm safe is easy to prove in court. The problem is that you can be sound asleep at the wheel and 100% compliant at the same time. So even though you're compliant to, I will call them unsafe regulations because they're not based really in reality. They're based on, compliance to a one size fits all box. It's very easy for people still to have fatigue related accidents and be compliant with their hours of service. So nuclear verdicts are getting very creative. We did it on our show a couple of weeks ago with Matthew Leffler was on our show talking about nuclear verdicts. So yeah, it's a problem. I mean, the cost of medical claims are going up. People are becoming more creative. The other thing though is drivers are doing some crazy things on the roads. Truckers too. It's absolutely insane what drivers are doing. And I've been out on the road in my truck, right? And I have my CB on and I'm sort of plodding along and the things drivers do, cutting you off, abusing you, like cutting in front of you, parking on the fuel. Yeah, brake checks, parking, having a 30-minute break in the fuel island, going inside showering. Like there's some stuff going on out there that have to do with the direct cause of the ELD mandate. A 30-minute break in the breakdown lane, because if I go over 30 minutes, I get a violation. So but I think, Jeff, the thing that I've noticed that's different since ELDs is the rushing. It's the speeding, because you're now trying to compress a lot of work into a short period of time, and if traffic's in your way, look out. So I've noticed that there's a whole debate on social media about old school versus new school, and you want to think that, politically we're a divided country. You want to see what goes on between old school, new school truckers out there. Right? It's absolutely devastating what's going on in the industry. There is no unity whatsoever, because a lot of guys are they're trying to make a living. I understand it. They're trying to make a living and get stuff done. And then, of course, it's the hurry up and wait, and you get to the shipper and you've got to wait around and all that other stuff. So it's a really tough life out there at the moment for carriers in particular on the road. I feel for these guys trying to make a living. But gosh, we got way off topic. I don't know how we.
Yeah, no. Well, it actually gives like a really good segue into that, because as you kind of mentioned, like these they're facing sleep deprivation, and one of the biggest things that I saw is like diesel demand itself has been its highest since 2007. With like the reserves and everything like that. So I know I think you guys mentioned on your show yesterday, like a lot of like East Coast drivers, they're going from place to place to try to basically find fuel.
Yeah, the tankers are they're going to multiple racks to find a full load. I saw an alert from Mansfield Oil. There's a daily alert they put out. It was code red in the southeast and the northeast here, because we've only got one big pipeline that comes in here from the Gulf, the Colonial Pipeline. We've lost a lot of our oil that comes in from Europe, India, because the gas prices in Europe have caused a lot of those big plants to switch from gas to diesel. So a lot of diesel's not coming to the East Coast to supplement fuel refineries that are here producing oil on the. Yes, I didn't want to mention their name, but there they are.
We'll blanket for the replay.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I don't want to throw anyone. I don't want to throw anyone under that truck or bus, as it were.
Well, I can tell you, when I was at Transcend Freight Systems, one of our team drivers was going through Kentucky, and a guy came on the on ramp onto the highway, and he went right underneath their trailer. Literally just came right out and went right underneath the trailer. Ended up, he was drunk. Both people in the car were killed. But the amount of enforcement officers MTO, DOT that flooded our facility. Logs, going through every single receipt, everything single toll, like not just for the last 3 days, like the last week and a half, trying to prove, because if you are out of service, you realistically should not be in that spot at that time. That's where, from my understanding, where a lot of these nuclear verdicts came down, because they're like, okay, you're non-compliant, so you shouldn't be there. Right. But I remember this team was a husband and wife team, and she was driving.
Yeah.
And they were both an absolute mess. I mean, she was just like unbelievable, like to watch her and see her. And then she's sitting in the office, and because we flew them home immediately and did it, but she's destroyed, and they're drilling her. And it's like, and at one point she didn't even know what to say. She was just like, and it was, I'm watching it, and I was disgusted in a way, but understanding that they have to figure this out. Right now, it ended up, this individual was hammered, because he came across 3 lanes right underneath the truck. Right. And it was like 2:00 in the morning or something. They were on their way to Nashville, but, it was crazy what the company had to jump through, the amount of logs we had to pull out, and that they were looking at stuff and saying, okay, this gas receipt by where you are is off by like 14 minutes 2 weeks ago. And why is that? And it's like, what are your trucks limited to? And it was amazing amount of hoops that the company had to jump through.
In some states, any degree of fault, makes you liable for those accidents. But I can tell you, from having worked in the insurance industry, some of the longest tail claims that have the most amount of litigation are the high-speed rear end, where a car is involved, particularly in the breakdown lane. They will go on for years and years and years. And flip it to the other side. I remember picking up some execs from a large truckload carrier at an airport to take them to show one of my model clients on how to manage risk. And they just had a big wreck that night. They, had to get, their lawyers involved, and they said, thank God the driver died. And I said, hold on. Why? Because it's cheaper for us if there aren't injuries. And I was shocked.
In the long run, you mean?
Yeah, in the long run. This was in 2002. And it just shocked me. I was disgusted that fleets would think that insurance and claims and accidents are a line item on a P&L, and that it's cheaper if someone dies. It's just, to me, is why are you in business if that's the reality? Big disconnect between what it takes to, run a truck, drive a truck, live a life, make a salary, support a family, and be an office guy who's on a job who's got no idea. But that's not new. Like, I know you might be shocked at that, but that's the reality of how a lot of people think, because it's hard. Sure. You often say, well, why don't you understand what it's like to be a driver? It's impossible if you've never done it. Like, you can think what it might be like, unless you know what it feels like to be depressed, lonely, suicidal, out of your mind with tiredness and fatigue, desperate, fighting with your spouse at home because the kids won't behave, and you're 1,000 miles away and headed in the wrong direction, and you're only making, 40 grand a year. Like, you're struggling to build a good equity in your home. It's a really tough life for these guys. And it's very hard for people to understand what they go through. When you talk about high turnover rates in trucking, there's no surprise to me that turnover rates are in that sort of 80 to 90 range all the time, have been for decades. So, yeah, lots to talk about, Ryan, in the sleep deprivation space. I know we've kind of got way off track there, but I do have some.
Hey, Dean, real quick. Yeah. That's why I've always told people that downplay drivers, disrespect them and everything. I said, listen, take some time out and go for a ride with them. See what they see on the road, and what, the things that come into play day in and day out. I mean, you wouldn't last. These guys are great. I have all the respect in the world for these guys. If we wouldn't have food on the table if they weren't there,
Yeah, exactly.
When I first came from a brokerage company when I moved to Ontario, and with Transcend Freight Systems, the first thing the owner did, made me get my license, and we went on team trips. And
that's brutal.
I don't know about the whole.
I was going to say, thank God I didn't have to do that.
For me, it was probably for him, it was brutal, because I played Christmas music the whole trip that we were gone, because I just love Christmas music. And it was in December, and So I can't speak to the, the depression or anything like that, because I had somebody with me that I was chatting with the whole time. But I can speak to the fact that you are a sixth class citizen when you walk into most companies. Right. I mean, I can't tell you how many people would look at me and just walk away, and I'm like, oh, okay, I guess it. And then they go and serve somebody else, or hey, Frank, because they know this person. I'm standing there like, and in my head, and this is, I guess, one of the worst parts is in my head. I go, hello, dumbass. I'm delivering your shit. Like, I have stuff in my truck that you need, and you're being a dick like this. Screw you. I'll throw it in reverse and hit the brakes and let it all go out in the driveway and just see you later, man. We're gone. Like, and that was and I'm like, this is bullshit. Like, what are you guys doing? And I was at a big courier facility, and I won't mention the name, but they got the blue logo and stuff. And these people were the worst. In Ohio, they were the worst. I stood there for 25 minutes, and finally one of their drivers says, hey, Nancy or whatever, this guy's been sitting here for a while. Oh, I didn't see him. I go, you looked at me 15 times. She goes, you know what? Just go stand over there. I'll be with you later. And I'm like, oh my God, are you serious? Like, I've got a truckload of packages that you need to get to people, and now I'm the bad guy. Like, I'm like, and it's because I spoke up, right?
Hey, take it for granted.
Well, teams are particularly hard, especially when people play Christmas music that you don't like. Yeah. Like, to use your example, not that Christmas music is bad, but a lot of people arbitrarily pair teams together based on choice of music, smoking, non-domicile address. Yeah, it's one of the hardest things you'll ever have to do in your life, and that's run 24 hours a day in a truck at speed, without break, with someone you don't know. And you're trying to sleep with one eye open, hoping they're still awake. It is absolutely gut-wrenching trying to drive in a team environment. It works really good if it's a husband and wife, brother, sister, wherever there's a biological relationship, absolutely fine. I did some biocompatible scheduling at a large truckload carrier where we paired drivers based on sleep type. And we put opposite sleep types in the cab so that you had a morning owl and morning lark and a night owl in the cab. So you had opposite sleep types, because if you by chance put two night owls in the cab, what have you got? No. You've got someone that doesn't want to drive in the day. So when you put in the sleep part of it, it takes out a lot of the pressure. And what we're talking about here, a lot of the frustration that Dan's talking about, a lot of drivers present themselves to dispatchers or receiver windows fairly grumpy and agitated and already upset before they even get there because they're sleep deprived, right? We, outside of the trucking industry, everyone interprets truck drivers' behavior incorrectly. Some are badly behaved from a wiring perspective, but we all behave like 2-year-olds when we're sleep deprived. Imagine, so truckers already, they come across as a fairly gruff, abrupt, non-communicative group. The reality is, when you're sleep deprived, it's hard to string the words together and make them come out in a way that makes you seem like you're normal. It's very hard to do. It takes a lot of work for a lot of guys, especially new guys to the industry. So, I'm harping on about the sleep thing, and we've blown through half an hour already.
You actually bring up a very valid point, Dean, because I got great sleep, but Rob, who I was with, was always tired. I'm like, oh, did you not sleep well? No, I didn't sleep well. And I'm wondering if I had one eye open, wondering if I was going to crash. I never even put that together actually till now, until you said that. But it makes a lot of sense because I got the night driving, which was just pretty much highway. Go to here. Once you get here, just wake me up kind of thing because, new and all that stuff. And I was that kind of guy where I'd kind of drive with my knee and grab the Atlas, the old Rand McNally Atlas. And but he was exhausted when we got home. And I'm like fired up because it was my first trip. I actually thought I slept really well in the bunks, and he didn't. And I was like, oh, it's probably because he's he was the president and he was used to his nice, comfy king size bed. I was like, now he's roughing it, So, but no, it's probably because he was terrified to hell that I would crash when he was sleeping.
I can guarantee he was terrified.
All right, yeah. Rob, if you're listening, I apologize, brother.
You want a number of the day, Ryan?
Yeah, let's get the number of the day, brother.
47 million. That's the number of turkeys that have been destroyed this year because of a highly pathogenic avian influenza virus that has devastated nearly 250,000 commercial flocks and close to 300 backyard flocks, 47 million birds. So there'll be fewer turkeys this year. Message is get your fresh turkeys orders in early.
Well, I was just going to ask about that because
and you're going to pay more money for them too.
Well, you know what, too, right? Because like we had our Canadian Thanksgiving last month, and I literally got my turkey the night of, right? Like the night before, and they were completely like full stock. So where do you think like people are going to see that actually affect their supply chain? Is it going to be like the butterballs, like the big commercial ones, or is it going to be like the local butcher shops that are going to?
I think fresh. What do you call the places like this? Where they have the produce stores. You know, the ones that don't buy in bulk. The farm stands. Mm-hmm. Right. So normally our local farm stand here hires a refrigerated van, and they have wooden shelves in it, and they just fill it with fresh turkeys, and you put your order in a month in advance. Wow. I think that's where you'll really suffer, because I think the ones that have got big buying power will probably gobble up a lot of the supply.
Well, I think too, you add to that, you add inflation with that as well, right? Because like you're going to have people not going for the turkeys, they're going to go for the chickens, or they're going to go for the cheaper option, right? And I know like, hey, people are either picking, hey, I'm going to have steak, or it's usually like I'm going to have all the fixins, but it's like one or the other. So that's a big thing, and I think with that, as you kind of mentioned, there's another looming rail strike on the horizon.
You said steak. That's why your dogs have started going nuts. You said
like, I said the trick words from there. But Dean, can you fill us in? I believe it's like Union Pacific. I think I was reading about that they're looking at.
You said chicken again. Yeah, chicken. He said chicken again, and the dogs.
There's someone delivering something outside. So what was the question, Ryan? I couldn't hear.
Oh, sorry, is that your dogs? Dean?
Yeah, my dogs.
Oh, I thought it was Ryan's dogs. Every time you said chicken, the dogs.
My dogs this way.
I thought it was Ryan's dog.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool. But yeah, boys, getting back to it, is like there is another rail strike, right? And I saw an article this morning that it potentially could affect like more metals, like the steel production, because of Union Pacific, the lanes that they run. From what I read, like the September rail strike or whatever was pending, 2 of the railways, they said no. You know, they said, I'm not going to go ahead with it. Can you give us some information in regards to what's going on with it?
Yeah, I will tell you that the best person to listen to or to read is Frank Wilner on Railway Age. Let me just double check. It's at railwayage.com. Railwayage.com. Frank Wilner is the guy. He wrote a really good piece on that this week about the potential of the rail strike. He had a really good rundown, and I can't see it. Rail Labour update. Here it is. Here on October 31, he wrote a really good headline, "A FUBAR lurks." I'm not sure what a FUBAR is, but that's the headline. And it's got a picture of it. He's saying that although 6 of the 12 rail unions have ratified the amendments, the 2 biggies haven't, and they rejected them. So that's the... it's interesting when Ryan, last time this happened, the government got involved. You know, it's one of the few contracts where the government's involved in mediation, and they made it happen.
Yeah, I read this. I know what FUBAR is, but I'm not going to say it here.
Yeah, I still can't figure it out. But anyway, what was interesting was these guys that have been in the railway industry for decades have said this is really, really serious and it could happen. Normally they dismiss it and say the government will get involved and it'll be resolved and we'll reach mediation. They are saying that relations between Labor and management have never been as bad as they are. So I part of me thinks there's no, again, same as what we had back last time this was talked about, there's no way this could happen. I don't know, like you could see some stoppages, you could see some slowdowns, you could see something. I hope it doesn't happen because we really don't need it in our supply chain. But yes, I think if this has the seriousness that people like Frank talk about, we will definitely see shippers flip some intermodal volumes, especially high-value commodities, hazmat to truckload, to eliminate the chance of that freight being caught up in the rail stoppage if there is one. We saw a little bit of it last time in that week leading up to, I think it was September 16 was the deadline. In the week leading up to that, we heard from shippers that were already flipping some volume over to truckload. Mostly contract carriers had plenty of capacity to absorb it. We talked about that on the show a few weeks ago. There's still plenty of capacity in the market to absorb any overflow, I think, from intermodal. So I don't know that people say, well, won't that be catastrophic and truckload or spot rates will pick up? Didn't happen last time, and I don't know that there's. I think the excess capacity in the truckload market will absorb whatever shippers send truckloads way, with the exception of a few lanes, of course, that might be problematic. But for the moment, shippers of intermodal are still saving about 30 to 30% over truckload right now. There's only about 5 or 6 lanes where truckload favors intermodal nationally on contract freight. Yeah, so even though truckload rates are dropping,
what's that website again?
railwayage.com.
Yeah.
And they've got a section called freight, and then they break out intermodal. And intermodal is, of course, where long haul truckload competes. And I read this all the time because I want to know what intermodal's doing and how they're tracking, and literally because it's and Frank's a really good writer. He's probably the go-to guy on this space.
See, because when I first read about it, that was my first thought. It's okay. It's going to be like the last 5 that have happened, and somebody's going to step in and they're gonna shut it down. Like in our area in Ontario now, we have teachers saying, well, we want 11.5% increase, and the government saying we'll give you 1.5%. Well, we all know they're going to come to an agreement before schools get shut down, because schools were shut down once, and it caused huge havoc. And I don't think the government will let it get to that point again. Kind of like what happened last year, where a government stepped in. So it's interesting that you said that it's at such a breaking point where that might not happen, because if there's any shutdowns or slowdowns in intermodal, it's going to create a clusterfuck everywhere.
Well, and they've already got problems right now, which is we probably should talk about the Canadian problem, Dan, with all the intermodal ramps that are backed up and problems going on in Toronto. That story that was reported yesterday. But it seems like the discontent is really over paid sick leave for unionized rail workers. We're down to not a whole lot of issues, I think. I don't know. To me, it seems like a no-brainer. But anyway, I see exactly where the Labor guys are coming from. I'm total support of what they're looking for here. So go on.
No, sir. I was going to ask a question because, like what I read was that, and it was the paid sick leave, was that it's 2 of the intermodal companies. Do you find, because they're union based, that if 2 say no, that the remaining 10 is going to have to follow suit? And it's basically you're just not looking at the 2; you're looking at the full 12 as all or nothing, essentially.
Yeah, I think there is an agreement somewhere between them, and again, I'll probably out over my skis here, but there is an agreement they have where they fall in line with the others, the big ones. Somewhere there's something that says that if these 2 big unions agree to something, that everybody else falls in line. I vaguely remember something like that, but I think that's the answer, Ryan. Yes, I think the big ones will probably lead the way there.
Which is usually the way it works.
Well, I think I can't remember the exact number. They represent a lot of workers, though.
And then I think maybe one of the good benefits too, like as you guys kind of mentioned, that like drive-in spot rates, they're matching like 2017 and 2018 rates, right? So if we have that kind of happen, then we're looking at interesting season, I see.
But there's also a flip side of this that is really affecting other companies. If you're putting your stuff on rail because you're saving 30% and the transit is fine, and something happens and you have to flip it over, that's like an instant 30% loss on your margins.
Yeah.
That is huge for companies. And then what happens to those companies, right? Those companies become altered in some way. Their profitability goes down. Maybe those workers don't get Christmas bonuses now or whatever. I mean, obviously, if it's like 2 days or 4 days that the strike's on, it's a different story. But if it goes on for a month or 2, like there's that flip side of it that's going to translate back to us, the consumer, eventually anyways, where we're going to pay for it, because we always do. I mean, you guys look at groceries. It's unbelievable, the price of groceries these days. Like unbelievable, just absolutely stupid sometimes, where I'm walking in, like a pack of bacon, which was $5, is now $9. And I'm like, holy crap. Like, is a pig shitting gold? Like, what is this, man? I don't know what the hell this is. But it's like all of this ripple effect when they throw this big rock in the pond affects. And if you're a company that is just coming out of, the last couple of years where profits were real tight, and a lot of places, like we have customers that come on the show and say, I'm spending millions of dollars a month that I never had to spend before. that's chewing right into profits because their customers aren't paying for it. And now you just throw another 30% increase in it where they're just starting to come out. It could cause a lot of problems depending on if it happens and how long it's striking for, right?
Well, imagine if it happened in the Canadian market, right? So you think about the change in volumes from the pandemic. We saw a lot of volume move away from Los Angeles and Long Beach. And in a strange way, Seattle is actually 1,200 kilometers closer to Shanghai than Los Angeles is. So what we found was, to avoid the congestion, a lot of ocean liners were running straight into Tacoma, Seattle, Prince Rupert. And Prince Rupert's got a very neat rail system where they run, I think, 4 trains a day off the dock straight to Chicago. Seattle, same, right? They have a lot of on-dock rail facilities. But a lot of that freight that was coming into the West Coast was for US domestic consumption. That's died down now. It's dropped right away. So a lot of that volume coming into Prince Rupert, they're trying to make it away across the CN network back to Toronto and Montreal. So that volume has sort of come back. But the story in JOC yesterday, to the point Ryan's question about potential rail stoppages, this makes it even worse if it happened. Toronto and Montreal dray truck drivers are avoiding congestion at those 2 largest rail markets because they're no longer wanting to wait hours, up to 5 hours, to retrieve and drop containers off. The article said they're flat out refusing to go into those yards and talking about how big of a situation it is, how serious it is. You've got, even though import volumes are coming down in like Vancouver and Seattle, they've still got a lot of congestion trying to move that freight inland. So I think inland congestion, we've talked about this ad nauseum. It's certainly a big part of what's still going on in our freight markets, is trying to get containers off ports into rail yards and then through intermodal ramps on the inland side. I think inland congestion is still a big deal, as we said numerous times on the show. But any talk of a rail stoppage just exacerbates this at the worst possible time.
I mean, Montreal's been a gong show for a decade plus.
Has it
like,
really?
And then with all the construction in the LaFontaine Tunnel and all these other, like I remember being out there talking to Hasbro, a big facility out there, and we were talking about their dray and all that kind of stuff. And it was to the point where he's like, no, we're going to like go from midnight till 4 or 5 a.m. That's the time we're going to start picking up all our chassis and all our containers, because they're just not I mean, it was a mess. It's bad in Toronto, but not even close to Montreal.
Right.
Montreal is just a complete mess.
I just looked up what FUBAR was, Jeff.
I told you.
What a headline. What a headline.
I told you.
Holy crap.
You never heard that before, Dean?
No, never. No, my Australian English
funny.
was different school. I went to different school.
Speaking of Australian, I'm going to see Jim Jeffries on Friday. Do you like Jim Jeffries, Dean?
Who did he drive for?
Jim Jeffries, he's a comedian.
Yeah.
I haven't heard of him.
Australian comedian. Yeah.
Really? Get out.
Yeah.
Thank God for Google. I'd be such a
You'll have to look him up, because he is friggin' hilarious.
There he
hilarious.
is.
Yeah.
He
brought the C word to the comedic stage. Which,
yes, we have a very different vocabulary.
That's where Mark Ridley learned that. Yeah, Mark
Yes.
Ridley learned it from him.
yeah.
Ooh. Yeah, I was. I learned that at age 5. My dad was playing cricket, and I was walking around the cricket oval saying, "You know what?" At age 5, while my dad's out in the centre batting, and people said, "There's that young Croke kid. He's going to be a so and so when he grows up."
A couple of years ago, I played golf with my son, and I went golfing. Actually, it was my neighbor and I went golfing, and we got paired up with 2 Australian guys. And I said to him, I leaned over, I said, "You just wait how long it takes for him to bust out the C word." And I think we were on the second green. He's like, "Ah!" And I'm like, "Dude, I was waiting for you to say that." He's like, "Sorry, mate. Sorry, I know." He goes, "I know it doesn't, around here." I go, "No, man, it's all good." And, it was
very common.
Non-stop all day. And every time it was said, I just laughed, because it was like in these, missing a putt, and it's like a 9-word sentence that ends in C, and I'm like, wow, that was like, you missed it by like a millimeter.
You got no idea what life was like in Australia. Oh, I swear the truck driver's going to come out one day, but I try and keep him suppressed.
You do a very good job. You do a very good job keeping him suppressed.
God.
Even when you and I are on the phone by ourselves and there's nobody listening, and we start talking about certain topics, you keep them suppressed, Dean.
I'm worried that Ryan's Alexa is listening to me somewhere. Someone planted one of those nasty devices somewhere that's listening to me. That's
it just lit up. It just lit up. So definitely.
Alexa, what is FUBAR?
From that aspect there.
What a headline of the day.
I know it is absolutely. So
hey, we should ask Daman what's going on over there in terms of the drayage problem around the ports. He'd probably be a good one to know, right? What's happening over on the West Coast. We should get hit us up one day with some intel there, because
we should get Daman on next week. See if Daman can come on next week. I mean, we'll be a little bit deeper into the intermodal and what's going on with the strike and stuff, and should be able to give us some good insight.
Yeah. It was only this time last year, right? We had the big floods in Vancouver that completely disrupted the rail lines, and then spot rates went out of control for best part of January. So,
well, that actually lasted. We were still feeling those effects because we have customers out there, and because they had to reroute, we were feeling that up until I want to say till May, June. We were feeling there's no way that we should be paying $16,000 to go from Toronto to BC. And it's just recently it's kind of gone back down to $6,000, 62, different things like that. And there's always going to be something like that. And one thing you guys kind of talked about yesterday, and we spoke about it a little bit last week, was just the Florida produce, because of Hurricane, and the produce went down 90%, right? And we're talking about citrus, we're talking about different things from there. Has there been any kind of anything better kind of happen in that market, or is it still continuing to go down as
it's still emerging? It's the slack season, as we said on the show, so you're not going to see much. Depends on how quickly they get their plantings back in line for the upcoming fruit season in particular. I think the citrus crop is probably done, right? It was already being ruined by disease, so I don't know how they recover from that, how long it takes to replant those trees.
Oh, there's Daman. I sent him a text, but he's actually watching. Daman, they're sitting there quiet in the background. Drayage West Coast drayage is good. Haven't heard of long delays. Most delays are in Toronto, Montreal.
Okay. So on spot rates, it was interesting. I noticed Seattle spot rates are up this week for dry van. They're up, dry van up 20 cents a mile this week after dropping since March. So Ryan, we got over the hump of the floods in December. In March, they peaked at $3.25 a mile. They were dropping since February this year, up 20 cents a mile in the last 7 days. So there's something going on with Seattle, Toronto dry van volumes. Yeah, that's exactly right. Most of it's CP, not CN, because CN added a lot more rail storage yards off dock to accommodate some of the surging volumes. So I think he's dead right that it's specific to a particular railroad. Yeah, lots going on. Overall freight market's still pretty cool. Rates are dropping. We don't normally refrigerated rates would start to pick up, picking up where we started the show. We're talking about turkeys. Turkeys normally drive up spot rates between now and Thanksgiving. The top 5 turkey states rates were up a little bit last week, but overall national reefer rates were dropping. So last week we normally see them pick up now. So I think that's a sense of how the demand is sort of cooled off, and I think how much capacity.
What are the top 5 states, Dean?
Minnesota, Arkansas, Missouri, North Carolina, and I'm going to say Indiana, I think. God, I should know this off the top of my head.
So typically any sales rep who's got freight in those areas going out can expect price increases if they're competing.
You're going to the meat patch anywhere out of the Midwest. You're going to struggle to find carriers that want to accept contract loads. You're going to have fairly high rejection rates on contract loads. Spot rates are going to be very high. It's hard to get trucks into those regions. Inbound rates into those regions are going up because you've got a lot more deadhead miles generally to get into those meat patch areas, especially around Joplin, Missouri. So Minnesota, North Carolina, Arkansas, Indiana, and Missouri are the 5 states. They account for 58% of the production in those 5 states. But the big dog there is literally Minnesota. It's by far the biggest of the states. So you'll see a lot of rate movement there, in particular for reefer carriers. So if carriers are listing, that's a market where you'll always see pretty good opportunity this time of the year. Rates are a lot higher out of those regions already.
But and if you're a broker, inform your clients this is what's going on and shit might happen.
Yeah, straight up.
Happens
Do you
every
find
year.
that people? You find the guys like having issues in Minnesota that just drive over to Wisconsin and kind of, because I feel for Wisconsin is a rich state as well, with freight is in hand.
It's kind of a different freight mix, right? You've got a lot of dedicated guys running out of Wisconsin with a lot of dairy products in particular.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a good question. I don't know how. I think you've probably got a lot of carriers that will have to run some deadhead miles if they can't get there. You know, you can get to Chicago. Chicago, Minneapolis is still a pretty decent lane. They're both big cities. So I don't know that people have problem with finding capacity. I just think they'll be upward, that rates will be higher outbound out of that region because of the increased volume. It will certainly soak up a lot of that capacity. If I look at, if I look at refrigerated rates this week in Minnesota, I can tell you historically what they've been doing. Minnesota rates sitting at around, outbound rates are sitting at around, excuse me while I delay here, 251. So in Minneapolis this week, so as of last Saturday, rates in Minneapolis for all outbound reefer loads were $2.51 a mile. That's excluding fuel. So you'd have to add 68 cents to that. The week before, they were only $2.38. Right, so they're on the way up after dropping for the prior 3 weeks. So that upward movement's already starting, Ryan. But 251.
And the lane of the day is Green Bay, Wisconsin to Bentonville, Arkansas. The line haul rate per mile is 262. 336 with fuel all in. Contract is 360, and that's down $1.16 year over year.
Yeah, some of that. Drop. Yeah, some of it's going to be affected. A lot of guys run, into Florida. Lower volumes coming out of Florida is going to affect their dedicated round trips with, cheese, butter, things like that. Mm-hmm. So they're going to be looking for other lanes. I think there's other lanes to get back home. So those head haul lanes are going to be loaded up to maybe get back to somewhere else. I mean, where do you go from Arkansas, right? You've got to load. You've probably got some empty miles there, right, before you're going to load something else in that meat patch area. So, yes, I think the general theme was that rates are still cooling off. I think we've got some room to go before they pick back up again. Contract rates are starting to cool. The rates coming into, where did I have this written down? Rates for, so active rates that are in routing guides for contract freight are down about 0.5% on dry van and down about 2% on refrigerated. But new rates coming in that were negotiated on earlier RFPs are coming in at about -6 on dry van and about -9 on refrigerated. So new rates coming in from previous negotiated RFPs are coming in much lower. Generally, rates are still in that 8 to 12% range lower for incumbent carriers that are rebidding contracts that were set earlier this year. So definitely contract rates are cooling off. Spot rates are still heading south, and they still will do that until, I think, first quarter of this year. Next year, we expect to see that bottom. We're still holding with that thesis. Interesting, some of the macroeconomic talks, people, there's mixed signals, right? We've got a very strong labour market. People are talking about there not being a recession. Some people are saying, have we already been through the recession? Some are saying we're still going to go into a recession. There's a lot of mixed signals in the market. We're certainly not seeing it on the freight side, but there's still plenty of demand.
Which is usually the first place we see it.
Yeah. I mean, demand is still relatively strong compared to prior years. Like we're still, hauling as much freight as we did in 2018, certainly on the spot market. So I like the ATA truckload tonnage index, Michigan State University ton mile index all have our demand for truckload, higher than sort of 2018, 2019 levels. It's just that we've got a lot of capacity. We've had so much capacity. I looked at some data yesterday on for-hire interstate carriers hauling freight. Since the pandemic, that's increased 30%. We've had 30% more carriers join. Like we've gone from, I think it was 340,000 to whatever, the 30% higher than that. I can't remember the numbers. But it's a lot of carriers. We've had the most growth in that interstate category. Intrastate straight trucks, not nearly as bad. That's not my dog. My dog's. That wasn't my dog's.
No, that was mine. That was mine.
So we've had a lot more capacity into the market. It's still entering the market. And of course, that just means that there's more capacity coming in, fighting for fewer loads. So that's
And you know what? When the pandemic was going on and nobody was spending money on trips or anything like that, and everybody was buying stuff, that made sense. Yep. Right. But like anything, if you look at 2018, when all these new carriers came in 2019 was a complete gong show because there was so much capacity and people paid.
Right.
And all of these people that like bought equipment during the pandemic probably paid way too much for it. Yeah. Right. There's that whole flip side. If the freight markets do drop, what's going to happen then? And I think we've all lived through that.
Well, that could be, and we're not out of the woods yet, right? We've got very high diesel prices. It's affecting profitability margins. I did some numbers yesterday. I would have been making 68 cents a mile this time last year. Now I'm making about 5. So that's
you would have been making 68 cents. Now you're down to 5 cents.
That's if I'm getting the fuel surcharge. That's based on all-in spot rates, right? So again, if I'm not getting the fuel surcharge, I'm done. But if I'm getting the fuel surcharge at 68 cents a mile, diesel's still 82 cents a mile, so I've still got to, carry some of that. But if I'm getting the full fuel surcharge, I'm still doing okay. The problem is that a lot of guys aren't getting the fuel surcharge on a lot of those lanes that they run, where there's their backhaul lanes in particular.
You're better to go get a job at McDonald's. You're better to go be home at night with your family every night, not be on the road, not deal with all the four-wheelers, not deal with all the BS. Yeah. Right. Not have the possibility of like your buddy who had the engine blow up and then spent $40,000 fixing it, or $80,000, I think it was. You look, if you're going to make 5 cents a mile, like you're better to find another career.
Well, I think that's what some folks have realized is that when you enter a bull market like they did in 2020, 2021, pretty easy to make money in those times when it bites. Like it did in February this year when diesel prices went up. Suddenly it's pretty hard to make money if you don't know how to make money, in trucking, not driving a truck. I just pulled up some rates on Seattle, Chicago, excluding the fuel surcharge at 99 cents a mile today. 99 cents a mile for 2,000 miles. And if I get the fuel surcharge, I'm at $1.67. So now, again,
you're cutting a check to them for 35 cents, 40 cents a mile just to run their freight.
So remember, these are rates based on loads that carriers have hauled and submitted to DAT every night. So this, like you say, well, who's hauling freight at 99 cents a mile? Well, some people probably are. So that tells you what outbound rates out of Chicago West have got to be like, or anything going into Seattle's got to be like, because that outbound lanes are dropping dramatically. Must be a lot of capacity in that Seattle market, but it'd be good to have Daman on to talk about some of those freight dynamics up there this time of the year.
I've asked him for next week, so we'll hopefully he'll come on. We could talk about maybe we'll make our West Coast show. Yeah,
I love that. Yeah. It's school. It's on all things Pacific Northwest.
Where we go, West Coast, right? See that?
I'm not doing that. No, you're on your own, brother. You're on your own. I'll skip next Wednesday.
Flashing gang signs.
Yeah, I know.
Gang signs, right? West Coast, baby. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Gang signs. I should wear the blue or red rag on the corner.
Got to say in the house.
You know what I'm saying?
Today's episode's really been off the rails, eh?
This show's never had rails, Ryan. This show's never had rails. It's all good. No, we just go.
Just go with ad hoc.
Of course. So as we're wrapping up here, boys, Dean, I was taking a look at the website while we're discussing. You're going to be in Houston from the 4th to the 6th. If people are not able to actually get into Houston, they can actually stream it online. They could pay to actually look at all the chats. And like you mentioned, you're going to be there for 20 minutes. It's like a little speed dating event, but then there's going to be a lot of opportunity to network as well, right?
And also Women in Trucking is coming up on the 14th, 15th, 16th, Women in Trucking Annual Conference in Dallas. It's going to be a pretty big deal. We'll all be there speaking. I don't know how many blokes will be there, but I'll be there at the Women in Trucking event.
And Jeff, I know you've got your big event tonight. If anybody's in the area, what time is it? Where is it? How can they get a hold of you?
It starts at 6:00 at the Franklin Steakhouse in Fairfield. 318 Passaic Avenue. So if you're in the area, stop by.
Love to have a steakhouse. Now you can have like surf and turf at this bad boy. I wasn't even invited.
Well, he's not having turkey after that stat that Dean gave.
A turkey will cost more than steak, so everybody will be having T-bones and tomahawk steaks for Christmas and Thanksgiving dinners.
Oh, man.
What's the beef?
Now you're making me hungry, man.
It's not even lunch.
You think you're hungry? I haven't eaten in like 6 months. Okay, I'm starving for a steak.
Dude, I can't even
Right,
imagine that if you're a carnivore, man. And you
I know. Trust me. God. Trust me. Every meal my wife makes, I'm like,
yeah. But look on the bright side, Dan. Look on the bright side, Dan. You're getting closer and closer to that moment of having that.
I am. And you know what? I am going to have the most fun gaining back the weight I lost than anyone has ever had in their life. I'm going to be sitting here on the show with like a roti in one hand and like, you know, just you guys are going to be like, where in the hell do you put it all? Like, dude, I got 30 pounds to get put back on the old body. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
All right, guys.
Yep, it's been amazing. Thank everybody.
Derailed it once again.
Thank you.
back from there. Feel free to catch our replays at 12 p.m. and 3 p.m. Eastern Time. Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and LinkedIn as well. Tomorrow's we're gonna have Personal Development Day, and then we got our wins and lessons on Friday. Thank you, Dean, for coming on this morning, and we're looking forward to seeing you next week. Take care, everybody.
Okay.
Have a great day, guys.
Bye.
Centurion Trucking, our motto is people before profit. Today's market requires more transparency, consistency, and focus on what our clients need to win. Centurion Trucking and American Logistics are poised to help their clients achieve and surpass their targets. If you're looking for a team that honors your needs, dreams, and aspirations, then get a hold of Daman at American Logistics or Centurion Trucking and start designing your career